Continue our Missouri Distillery Series here at Missouri Ridge Distillery in Branson, Missouri, something called the tourist capital of the world, but just a few minutes south of Springfield where we're from. So Allan Arnet and I are here with Greg Pope, the owner and master distiller here at Missouri Ridge Distillery. So Greg, what made you leap into the distillery business here in Branson?
Third generation distiller, first one legal. My family's been making illicit alcohol for 101 years now.
Oh, wow.
I did industrial commercial construction for my first career. My wife is a surgeon. When she retired from practice, we wanted to leave Salt Lake City, Utah area, and we moved here to the Ozarks because of water chemistry. And she grew up in Blair, Nebraska, and would come to the Ozarks on holiday. So we kind of fell in love with this environment. But we just decided that I was getting too old to stay in construction, and she didn't want to play doctor anymore. So I told her, I said, well, I do make pretty good alcohol. Let's look at the feasibility of opening a distillery. And I went down to my local SBA branch and got all of the financial projection forms from them, filled out 3 years on hypothetical numbers, being very conservative on what I thought we could produce. And actually the numbers worked out pretty well. So we decided we were going to sell her clinic in Utah, move here full time, and open a distillery for our livelihood. Some of my earliest conscious memories are like pre-kindergarten or around distillation. My paternal grandfather was a distiller for Chevron Corporation, and he would make ethanol for your gas tank all day long and then come home and make ethanol for your fuel tank.
Different tanks.
Right. But like I said, as a pre-kindergarten child, my paternal grandfather would have me paste up his stills with an oatmeal paste because a 4-year-old's fingers can get into a tighter nook and cranny than a big fat pudgy adult finger can. And it kept a cleaner line on so there wasn't as much cleanup at the end of the distillation run, right?
Nice.
But I'd sit on his lap and he would talk to me about the chemistry and the science behind distillation. As I grew up, the Mr. Whiskey on my logo, the Missouri Ridge Distillery Mr. Whiskey, that was my nickname since the 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
So when we moved here to Branson and we found this piece of land that was for sale, this happens to be the second highest peak in Taney County. So we're on a ridge top. So I'm like, well, Missouri Ridge is a good name. I said, but I can keep the Mr. Whiskey, Missouri Ridge Whiskey, right, as my nickname and incorporate that into my business logo.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah, but that's kind of what got me started with the wife being in the medical field as a doctor. Unless you have a piece of paper says you can do something, you cannot. So she convinced me to go to school, so I went to the Artisan Craft Distilling Institute in Gig Harbor, Washington for the fancy piece of paper that says I know how to do this. I tried to convince her I didn't need it because it's just alcohol, and she's like, nah, you really need to do it. So
and the ancestors didn't need it.
Yeah, the ancestors didn't need it. I already knew. And kind of a funny story, the first day at the Artisan Craft Distilling Institute, one of my professors made a statement that was incorrect regarding calculating proof and correcting for temperature, and I used his syllabus to prove him wrong. So he says, well, F you, smart ass, if you think you can do this, get up here and do. So I got up and taught the class, and they gave me a partial tuition reimbursement.
Nice.
Yeah, right?
Like it.
So it was a ton of fun. But
So what was your biggest oh shit moment when you started the distillery?
wow, there's a lot of them. The biggest one, honestly, we were open maybe 3 weeks, and we had an American single malt whiskey fermentation that was incredibly vigorous on the first day. We went home. When we came back to work the next morning, one of our fermenters had exploded.
Oh, wow.
And there was 300 gallons of single malt as a distiller's beer all over the floor. So, yeah, that was probably the biggest oh shit moment, right? Losing about $15,000 worth of wash or mash, That was, like I said, being in the first couple of weeks of being open, that was a tough nut to handle. Looking back, now that we're 10 years open, that was still probably the biggest accident that we had as far as a financial loss. You know, we had one other situation as an oh shit moment, also within the first couple of weeks, where we learned that we needed to wait longer when adding water infusions. We were cutting down a barrel of bourbon, and we did the math on it, floated our hydrometer, proof wasn't quite right, so we went ahead and added additional water. And then once we got that stirred in, we had overshot our target, right? We were shooting for a 94 proof, and we were at about 96. And when we added the extra water, we ended up being about 92. So so we had to tap into another barrel of bourbon to bring the proof back up, right? And so those were probably really the only two mistakes that we've had that were actually oh shit moments.
If you could go back to day one, is there anything at all you would do differently?
I would substantially increase the size of my warehouse. You know? Yeah, we doubled the size of this building during the planning stages, and before we were open, we were too small.
Wow. How many square foot is the warehouse?
6,600.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
For a craft distillery, I mean, that's pretty big.
Yep.
Tell me about what kind of stills and barrels that you're using.
Sure. So for barrels, we get them from Independent Stave Company out of Lebanon, Missouri. They are the world's largest cooperage and the most sought after specifically for aging bourbon whiskey. Fortunately for me, being here in Branson, it's just 76 miles from driveway to driveway. So when the world's best cooperage is down the street, that's who you use, right?
Yeah, right.
So as far as stills go, I run two 450-gallon copper kettles. These are made out of 1/4-inch thick copper. We are the only distillery in the world that runs this vertical canted column. It's a technology that I invented and patented, and it gives me a higher proof and a better flavored distillate in a single distillation than any other distillery in the world. In fact, every other distillery has to redistill their product between 3 to 6 times to get to the same proof point that I do in a single distillation. So when you're looking at a traditional refractioning column, many people just refer to them as bubble plates. Each set of bubble plates gets you 2.5 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit of reflux. So let's say that you're looking at a 4-plate column. Well, that's 12 degrees maximum potential reflux. So if you do 3 runs, you will have had a total of 12 distillations, because each plate holds liquid and is a secondary, tertiary, or quadratic distillation, right? So my column actually generates 42 degrees of reflux in a single distillation. There's nothing inside the column that holds liquid, so it's a single distillation. When you think about any liquid moving through a cylindrical wall, only what's on the extreme perimeter would come in contact with the cylinder wall edge. The more contact that the ethanol can have in its gaseous state with copper, the softer and smoother the distillate will be that comes out of it. Now, copper's thermal conductivity properties allows it to dissipate heat better than any other natural metal. So as the hot evaporative ethanol gases are forced up into the column by the dome shape on the top of the kettle, that hot gas comes in contact with the copper dissipates the heat, condensing it from a gas back to a liquid, slides down the cant back into the kettle to become reheated, and that creates that reflux cycle. Like I said, my column generates 42 degrees of reflux. So let's say we were looking at a 12-plate column. That's still 12 distillations, but 36 degrees of reflux, right? So if you're one of the big legacy distilleries, you know, like Buffalo Trace, I believe, runs a 12-plate column, you know, so they're getting 36 degrees of reflux in 12 distillations, and I get 42 degrees of reflux in a single distillation. So we're one run and done.
Wow. Talk to me just a little bit about the differences in climate from Missouri, say, versus Kentucky, and water purity.
Sure. This is going to be a little bit shady toward Kentucky, but you'll see where I'm going in a second. The only thing about Kentucky bourbon is their water, right? They use barrels from Missouri, they use corn from Missouri, they use wheat from Kansas, they use rye from Indiana, and barley from Wisconsin, right? So the only thing Kentucky about Kentucky bourbon is our water source. All of the distilleries in Kentucky are all essentially drawing out of the Rubidou, which is the second largest freshwater aquifer under the North American continent. We too are drawing from the Rubidou. So I'm not positive of the numbers, but I believe Bardstown is the highest elevation distillery in Kentucky, and they're around 600 feet above sea level. The Rubidou is traditionally found between 300 and 500 feet above sea level. We drilled a 14-inch hole 1,000 vertical feet down to get into the Rubidou. So we're drawing from the same limestone filtered water source that all of Kentucky is, except I've got 3 times the value of limestone fracture filtration to give me a better water quality product than what Kentucky's drawing. When you look chemically at our water chemistry profile, we match the Highlands of Scotland exactly on pH and almost grain for grain on the percentage of calcium, magnesium, lack of iron, etc. But the mineral composition of our water chemistry is identical to the Highlands of Scotland. That also lends itself to making a better quality distillate. So I am my own public water utility. With the well system that we installed when we were building this business, it's all engineered by the state. I'm literally my own public water utility. I can currently offer 5,000 homes in the area their drinking water, and if I change the horsepower on my pump, I can supply up to 10,000 homes in the area with drinking water. So, but I'm greedy. I keep all of the water for me. You know, when we put the well system in, I just told the wife, I says, think of it this way, we're paying our water bill 100 years in advance.
When someone opens a bottle of your product, what do you want them to experience?
One of the finest quality distillates that humankind has ever made. So our mash bill on our single barrel bourbon is a 60-40 corn to barley. Before bourbon was called bourbon, it was referred to as John Barley corn, and it was 60% corn, 40% barley. I touched on it a little bit ago. My family's been making that 60-40 corn to barley split for 101 years now. Obviously, I'm using a different corn supplier. Our non-GMO super sweet white corn we source out of Decatur, Illinois, and then we buy direct from Breese out of Chilton, Wisconsin for our barley. So everybody knows Wisconsin grows the best barley the world over, which is why even German brewers are buying barley from Wisconsin, right? We're going to have 2 different releases. So if you go back in time together, we did some research. We found a traditional red ale recipe to the T. We took half of it and put it in casks. I had a couple of barrels sitting back here that were 7-year-old bourbon barrels that we transferred over to a new fermentation time, and then they're just resting nicely in some of our 7-year-old bourbon barrels.
And will that product be available at all 3 distilleries?
Yes, sir. The 3 breweries will have it available, the barrel-aged stuff. Wire Road sold some of the non-barrel aged product over St. Patrick's Day, right? The Revolutionary Red went off without a hit. It's a fantastic product. I'm very excited to see what it's going to taste like coming out of a cask after it's 6.5, 7 months old. So, yeah.
So I got 4 quick hit and run questions for you.
Sure.
Bourbon or rye?
Bourbon, straight bourbon. Yep.
High proof or easy sipper?
Honestly, I have a palate for the high proof, but I'm not a hazmat high proof, right? And one of the reasons we bottle at 94 is traditionally that's high for bourbon without getting into the cask strength realm. I like it, honestly, closer to 100 for me personally, but since I'm marketing to the masses, we showcase how smooth our 94 proof is. It actually drinks softer than a lot of 80s out there,
Favorite pour that isn't your own?
Probably a Weller's 12. After that, I would have to go maybe a Blanton's, but as a manufacturer, it's real hard to find something you like that's not yours. And that's a big motivation as to why I'm making whiskey for a living is, nobody really admits to being an underage drinker, but when I was 14, 15 years old, a Woodford Reserve Double Oak was my go-to. Growing up in a distilling family, we weren't kept away from spirit, you know.
Yeah.
And that was just my, you know, like every Friday kind of a thing. But as an adult, once I got back from the Artisan Craft Distilling Institute and learned how to trust my nose a little more, I can smell things that you don't necessarily want to consume, right? I'm not in any way, shape, sort, or form implying that there's toxic elements in other product, but you can smell where they've missed cutting heads. And the reality is when you're looking at a refractioning column, because of similar boiling point temperatures, it's physically impossible to cut heads as clean as you can on a pot still, right? And so all of the legacy guys are running refractioning columns, so they simply don't have the opportunity to make as clean of a cut as a pot still can make. So that makes it, you know, I don't want to come off as snooty or rude, but it is just my lived experience, right? So I prefer a pot stilled product. They just taste better, you know, you can get cleaner cuts.
And then one last question, do you have a dream collaboration?
Wow. You know, honestly, a lot of people don't know this, but Gary Heingardner from Wood Hat Distilling, he's probably America's foremost leading authority on corn, and he grows a lot of his own corn, and I think I would like to do a collaboration with him. To be fair, I think he's 83 or 84, you know, and I lost my dad at 86, so, you know, I hope Gary lives a lot of years, but I would like to do something with him as a dream collaboration. Him and or the wild man out of Indiana, old Allan Bishop. You know, I admire him beyond words can say. And he's just a mad scientist, and I respect everything he's done in the distillation world.
Well, guys, that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks again, Mr. Whiskey, Greg Pope, owner and master distiller here at Missouri Ridge Distillery in Branson, Missouri. Appreciate your hospitality today, showing us around. Guys, if you get a chance to come down, check it out. Definitely worth the stop. It's not very far off the main road, and you'll certainly enjoy yourselves. Love the spirits we had today, and love the time and socialization and the brotherhood of bourbon. This is what it's all about, guys. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir. Cheers. Yeah, remember, it doesn't matter how you drink whiskey, it matters that you drink whiskey.
Absolutely.